and you are listening. W N
H
8
H
8
L
L P
1
1
O
O G
point
point
5
5
F
F
M
M
New Haven
New Haven
streaming
live
live
at
www.
www.
Dot New Haven Independent.
No, yay.
Hello and welcome to WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to join me on an exploration of what makes the Elm City tick. Mark Greenberg is looking to make our city and our state tick as our next state comptroller. He's running for the Republican nomination for the post, and he's here in the WNHH studio to tell us why. Welcome, Mark Greenberg. How nice it is to meet you.
Hi, how you doing, Paul? Good to be here.
We're from different parts of the state. You're in Litchfield.
Yeah, northwest corner.
And you're the kind of guy whose name I see every few months, you know, in the news, and never met you. So it's been nice to.
Well, hope that's good and not bad that you see my name in the news.
Actually, I haven't seen you in the roundup of arrests. Just running for office.
That's a good thing.
And you're running for the office of Comptroller. Before I ask you why you want the job, most people don't even really know what a Comptroller is, even why we spell it COMPTROLLER rather than CONTROLLER, which is the job in New Haven. What is a comptroller?
Well, I don't know why we add the P either. That seems a little archaic. But basically the comptroller...
It's an Anglo-Saxon thing.
I think it is. It's about 100 years old. The comptroller is the CFO of the state, basically, Chief Financial Officer.
Okay.
And looks after the budget, certifies the budget, looks after the pension, God forbid, and a lot of other things. The actual duties of the comptroller in the statute, it's quite long. Actually, what the comptroller does, and I'm hoping to be elected and do something for the state.
You just named, though, the full set of what I knew the comptroller did. What other kind of stuff does a comptroller do?
Well,
I mean, you sit on boards, right?
We sit
like
on boards.
You
know, one of the important things that we do is we sit on the bonding commission.
And you vote on the bonding.
We vote on the bonding.
Oh, that's right.
Commission.
I remember Lembo, the current comptroller, breaking with this fellow Democrat Governor Malloy on some of the corporate aid votes.
Well, most of the time he doesn't break, frankly.
Right, you're right. That's what made it news.
That's exactly right, because most of the time he just does what he's told to do. For instance, recently the bonding commission voted for the $10 million for the Dillon Stadium.
Right.
Complete total boondoggle, just like Dunkin' Donuts was for the city. Wasn't for the owners of the
Dunkin' Donuts Stadium.
Yeah, they do really well.
It wasn't just the Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, they were going to have
Dunkin'
baseball.
Donuts Stadium, right, which is filled to the brim every day. It's doing very well for the owners of the Yard Goats. Not doing too well for the city of Hartford that voted on that.
So, Mark, as just so people know about comptroller, you don't set the budget. That's the lawmakers and the governor. You don't invest our pension money. That's the state treasurer. You're basically, as CFO, you're kind of like making sure the money goes in and out the way it's supposed to, right? You sign the checks. Everyone who works for government would get a Mark Greenberg signature on his or her check. And you're letting the public know what you think the deficit is going to be, right? You issue these forecasts. Like Lembo's had the pleasure of telling us every quarter that we have a lot less money than we thought we were going to have coming in. So you monitor, besides making sure the money goes in and out of the accounts, you make sure that it's being spent the way we said and that it's being protected. You let us know if there's trouble ahead. Good way of putting it?
A good way of putting it, that's right. But the comptroller has influence and could show some projections, could also put into consideration certain bills. So it's more than just looking and certifying.
So you can actually introduce legislation? You got to get a legislator to do it for you?
Well, I think it has to be sponsored. I think it does. But
you have influence as a constitutionally elected officer.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I would be privy to the numbers. I'd be privy to the process. Also, frankly, I've been saying for a long time now that the process of determining a budget is not working out too well. It's like the dog looking for its tail and never catches it.
And the reason you're saying that is that the income tax receipts have consistently come in so below projections that every time we make a budget, within a few months, the comptroller tells us we're $200 to $300 million short, and eventually we get deficits going up to $1.5 billion.
Well, that's what happened after the bipartisan budget was passed in October. 2 weeks later, there was a 214.
So why is that happening? I'll give you the liberal Democratic version
Yeah.
of why it's happening. According to Martin Looney when he's in the studio. He said the reason is that over a series of years after we passed the income tax under Lowell Weicker, the governor, in the early 90s, we, for a lot of years, had surpluses, and that's because we progressively depended more and more on high earners, mostly in Fairfield County, to produce a disproportionate share of our revenue, saying as long as they're making money on Wall Street, whether it's hedge funds, equity firms, traders, our receipts are going to be there, and we count on that. And then because their industry, the numbers vary so much, wildly from year to year. One guy could just be declaring profits one year and not the next. That could take millions out of our coffers, that we no longer have a predictable stream.
Well, I agree with what you just said about what Marty said, 97%.
what's your take?
We have a predictable stream of reducing income tax because people are leaving and voting with their feet. They're leaving, they're going to Florida. They don't like the estate tax. They're becoming 183 day people, I call them.
Right, so they can count it as residents.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's certainly right, but we're forcing him out. We're chasing him out. And that's because our marginal rates, our basket of taxes is now greater than our neighbors, New York, Rhode Island.
Well, that's actually not true. For instance, income tax is not higher than New York.
I said the basket of
Okay,
taxes,
you put them all
and you're
together,
wrong,
so where do we
Paul.
hit them?
We hit them everywhere. We hit them with a car tax, personal property tax, regular property tax, estate tax. If you add up the basket of taxes, it's all taxes. We're paying it all.
So is the solution to go from a $40 billion biannual budget to like a 35 and just have incredible pain, or what's the solution?
Did you take that out of my mouth? You know, I've called for 36. Okay, take off $2 billion.
But that's not easy, given how much of the budget is non-discretionary, Mark. You'd have to make deep cuts in the social net.
Nothing is easy. We got ourselves into a mess. We have to make some hard choices.
What are some of those choices? Because every time someone comes in and says that, the most they give me is we don't monitor Little League refs.
I have to look at it very, very carefully with all the data in front of me. And I'm not prepared to just say, based upon looking at a budget on the internet, that we should cut this, this, and this. I will tell you, being in business 43 years, I know how to do it. I've done it before. So when I have all the data in front of me, I'll make suggestions to the legislators to make it happen. There's not a single person who said that we have to cut the budget $2 billion but me. I'm waiting for those governors, people running for governor, to say that we got to reduce the scope and size of government. We are spending too much per capita in this state compared to our competitor
Okay, so Mark,
neighbors.
a lot of people agree with that. They never come with specifics. Your point's well taken that until you're on the inside, you shouldn't have to produce a line item view of what you would cut and not cut, because otherwise you sound kind of not so smart, like some people come in here and some of the examples. But you can think broadly. You've been in this game long enough that if you're saying government could be smaller, you certainly have specific ideas of what kind of taxes are too high. You should be able to tell me what kind of functions we should no longer do. Are you saying we should no longer support group homes? Are you saying that we should no longer be having as big a state police force? Are you saying that we should continue Malloy's policies of not having as many people in jail? Like, there have to be some big vision. Where you go in with this?
Well, I will say right off the bat that inefficiency could probably deal with 5 or 10% of that, of the cut.
But everyone says that too. But when they come
But they don't do anything.
But let me give you the example. Steve Sitnick's running for governor. He came in here. The one example he gave me was we shouldn't have Labor Department inspectors looking at Little League refs to see if they're licensed. The truth is we would lose money if we didn't fine them for those things, and it would only add up to bupkis. What kind of inefficiencies do you see?
Well, for instance, I know for a fact that we spend 9 times what an average state does on administration of DOT, Department of Transportation. That's just one example. We run
But we do need to fix bridges and roads, right?
Oh,
We can't
absolutely.
have another Marianas River Bridge.
Yeah, I know, but we don't have to spend 9 times what the next state does in the administration of those functions. So there are a number of things that we can do and we could trim. But look, I'll come back 2 months after I'm elected, and I'll give you absolute, real details of how we're going to cut some spending.
Okay, and that's Mark Greenberg you're listening to. He's running for the Republican nomination for state comptroller, the chief financial officer, as he puts it, for the state of Connecticut. Not only signing the checks, not only sitting on important boards and commissions like the Bond Commission and casting votes, but really being a watchdog for the citizens on the inside, giving quarterly projections of where our budget stands and influentially weighing in on how we should get our house in order. And everyone left to right agrees that our financial order House needs to be put in order. So, Mark, what I think I'm hearing you saying is that you're not going to give me a plan for shrinking government to $36 billion on a biannual basis, but you're convinced it can happen. You've had a lifetime in business, and that if you're elected, you believe that within 2 months you're going to show us that map.
I'm going to start showing you the map. Absolutely true.
So why do you want the job, Mark?
Because I remember when the state was absolutely the greatest, not only in the Northeast but in the country. Before the income tax and before Lowell Weicker, this was where everybody came. This was where the wealthy individuals came, and they resided in Greenwich and Stamford, and they brought their businesses, they brought their hedge funds.
And they weren't taxed, and they had a state tax system that said that cities like New Haven had to have half our properties off the rolls, and basically we subsidized them.
Don't get into that with me, because that is ridiculous. 60% of Hartford's off the rolls. 50% of Waterbury's off the rolls.
54% of New Haven.
54%. This has to be corrected, and cities have to be made more vital if we're going to solve our
How would you
problem.
correct that?
Well, you know something? The assessors could correct it to a large extent, because 501c3s have to prove that they're using their real estate for the purpose of their mission. And the assessors do not press these 501c3s into answering those questions.
And you're talking about the nonprofits that don't get taxed. The opposite view is that you kind of collude with them to bump up how much their properties were, so we get greater reimbursement under pilot premium.
But that is the pilot reimbursements are ridiculous and small and finite and nothing compared.
Right.
The fact that New Haven, here's a bad subject. The fact that Yale University should be paying nothing in real estate taxes is absurd.
Well, Charles Grassley, the Republican senator, agrees with you about higher ed tax exemptions. So would you be for taxing Yale?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Based on means, based upon capability of paying. They have $1 billion.
Because when you're talking about making sure that all the stuff's on the roll, for a city like New Haven, this is different from other cities. So much of a big percentage of our 54% of tax-exempt property comes from two entities, Yale University and Yale New Haven Hospital. So it's really, we're not going to get so much more if we scour every last church to see if they're really tax-exempt. So would you deal with it rather than increasing state payments to cities by getting not-for-profits on the tax rolls?
Absolutely, based upon need. Based upon need and based upon if they're using their property for the right purposes. I'll give you a perfect example. Every 4 years, the Simon Foundation, which is my animal rescue foundation, gets a quadrennial questionnaire that goes into what am I using my facility, which saves dogs and cats in Bloomfield. What are we using it for? And if I'm not using the whole facility for my mission, then I'm obligated to pay a portion of that assessed value in taxes. Well, in my case, I use my full facility for the mission, and we're at a big deficit, which I carry every month and every year. But the point is, the assessors need to look into what the 501c3 properties are being used for.
Okay, now higher education, I think I'm hearing you say that if you're a wealthy institution of higher education, for instance, if your endowment's over $20 billion, you can pay taxes on your property to the city. You and Grassley are saying that.
I think so, absolutely.
What about hospitals?
We have to look at the means very carefully.
Big hospitals.
Big hospitals?
Yale New Haven Hospital.
Sure. Let's look at it. Why not?
They say that that's going to make it harder for them to deliver care to the poor because they already take a haircut on Medicaid.
Well, of course they're saying that because they don't want to pay taxes. Okay? Every situation's different. By the way, there's a tremendous, as you know, consolidation in hospitals.
Right.
Hospitals actually...
Hartford and Yale New Haven are basically dividing the state the way in newspapers you got the Current and the Post. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, and Hartford just had a merger sort of with Charlotte Hungerford in my area. The point is that hospitals are actually becoming stronger as they're going through this consolidation and as they're understanding Obamacare a little bit better. And insurers are becoming stronger too, like Aetna. So the bottom line is I want to look at their profitability. I want to look at what portion of their real estate they're using for their actual mission, which is taking care of people, as opposed to just housing members of their board or things like that. But we have to look at
You're talking about two issues here. You're talking about whether they have expenses they're calling not-for-profit that aren't. But I think I want to nail you down to this. I think you're also saying that the legitimate education mission of higher education that big universities have should still not exempt them from paying local property taxes. And are you saying that about hospitals too? In addition to the issues you brought up, like the smaller stuff, the house, the executive might have.
Yeah, yes.
You're also saying the hospital mission should be not exempting them anymore from property taxes.
We have to look at means as well. I do not want
right. The big hospitals, Yale New Haven and Hartford hospitals, should they be paying taxes?
Sure.
Not look at it. Should we do it?
Yeah, let's do it.
So
Let's
then,
do it.
so then you're
Hey-
saying the state would no longer have to pay these payments in lieu of taxes, so that would help the state budget, and cities that have been screwed out of being able to tax their property will then be
Well,
able to.
Yeah, let me give you a perfect example, okay? We talk about the ECS system. We talk about
That's
redistribution.
educational cost sharing.
Talk about redistribution of wealth from the stronger towns than to the cities. The city of Hartford has hundreds of millions of dollars of assessments sitting with the state of Connecticut that the state is paying no taxes on. Why doesn't the state pay its share of taxes to the city of Hartford, which will then reduce a payment that ultimately, yes, it has to pay, or
So
some
now
other.
you're talking about the second group of pilot payment in lieu of taxes
Yeah.
covered properties. First we had the not-for-profits, then we had the state-owned property. Do you think the state should pay taxes to cities on state-owned property?
Yes.
Why?
Why not? Because they're ultimately it's coming from somewhere.
Okay, now we love you in New Haven for that because now you've solved our problem, but you've now made that budget problem you've identified in Hartford worse, Mark Greenberg, because now the state, which already can't pay its bills, would have to pay for all this office space.
Well, it's taking out of one hand, putting in the other, basically. You know what I'm trying to get
No,
at
I
is
see
this.
your point on pilot.
Yeah.
Because in that case, you're not costing the state more. You're cutting the state budget through. You're really shifting the cost to hospitals and universities, which is, by the way, Daniel Malloy, the governor, did try to get the hospitals to pay more taxes, and both parties stomped him for it.
What my inherent in what I'm saying is that this taxation system we have doesn't work, hasn't worked for a number of years. So we have to come up with something different. We have to come up with something out of the box where we don't produce these deficits year after year after year, and thinking the old way is not going to work. We have to look at the whole methodology of collecting.
And Mark Greenberg, running for the Republican nomination for Comptroller, wants to bring new thinking, he's saying, into the way we approach our budget. He's running against Kurt Miller, the first selectman of Seymour, for the nomination against the incumbent, Kevin Lembo. Now, did you grow up in Litchfield, Mark?
Yeah, for much of my life. My parents had and grandparents had a summer camp in Goshen, Connecticut, which is one town north, since 1947. So every single summer I was up as a camp counselor.
Are you from New York originally?
I'm from originally Rosslyn, New York.
Yeah, because you have that accent still.
I do.
Well, I didn't understand. My father grew up in Brooklyn. He never lost that. Like 70 years later, Bernie Sanders still sounds like, he always in Vermont, sounds like Brooklyn. What is it about that New York accent?
I don't know. I'm trying to lose it though. I'd like to have a Litchfield accent.
No, come on. New York accent's so much more authentic. We're not going to believe you about cutting the budget for cities if you got a Litchfield accent. But let me ask you this. So you built a very successful real estate management firm in Litchfield. You've been doing that since 1980. So you're a lifer.
Well, no, my management firm was in New York.
Oh, okay.
It's called now MGRE Greenthal. It's one of the largest management firms in the metropolitan area. I no longer own it, but I did start it. I do own a lot of properties in Connecticut.
Before we close out this interview, tell me what your experience in real estate taught you that would help you be a good comptroller.
Well, in real estate, you deal with negotiations all the time. Negotiations with the town on taxes, with the tenants on leases, with contractors on bills and on contracts, and you're very adroit on your feet in dealing with every situation every single day. So this is what we need at the comptroller level.
But do we need that in a comptroller? Do we need that someone who runs management and budget, or the governor? The comptroller basically is our watchdog. Why do we need a watchdog with experience? Or when do we want you to be state auditor if you're good at looking at the fine print of contractors? Why comptroller?
Well, I'm going to be more than a watchdog, okay? I'm going to make sure that the governor's office is open to me, and if the door's locked, I'm going to break down the door, okay?
All right.
I'm here to make the state great again, the way it was when I was growing up, before the income tax. So I'm not going to be very idle and just sitting around. I'm going to be doing a very active job in making sure we can turn things around.
Mark Greenberg, you ran for Congress twice, right? In the 5th District?
No, actually, I ran 3 times.
3 times.
I
You
ran
didn't win.
I ran as a nominee of the Republican Party once in 2014 against Elizabeth Esty. I got 47% of the vote, which was the best in 2014 and 2016. So my
For
margin
Republicans,
was
you mean in the on the tickets?
on the ticket.
You also were running in the one district where Republicans sometimes win, just to be fair. Democrats have a lock. They don't even have competitors in the other 4 districts.
okay, we could be
Not
fair.
to play you down.
No,
but
that's okay.
You still ran a real race.
Yeah. We ran a real race, and the 5th District is turning. somewhat Democratic. You
Of
know,
course,
our registration
like the whole
is,
state, like the whole Northeast. Yeah.
Yes, so I feel that it did well.
Right, you did well. You weren't like a fake candidate.
Well, I have to say that 52% of the people who didn't vote for me probably now wish they did.
Mark Greenberg, what did you learn running for Congress that you think will help you run for comptroller and serve as a good comptroller?
Well, you know, running for Congress is a political game. You know, you run for office, you need to make happy certain people. You know, until you get to the primary, then you're bringing your message to the people, and hopefully they agree with you, and then the general election. So, but, you know, I've been running for on and off since 2010 when I first went for the nomination for Congress, and I've learned an awful lot, met a lot of friends, but in the end, I think it's the people in the primary who determine who the nominee
You didn't bring
will be.
up your 2 minutes of fame that can be added to your
I
credits
have
running.
more than 2 minutes of fame. Which
You have 2 minutes
particular?
of fame. Come on. You were the one Republican candidate who said no to former Governor John Rowland when he was on the way going back to jail trying to have sleazy hidden contracts with
you-
people running for office. You said, I won't hire you. And then you served as a star witness in a second corruption trial.
Oh, you bring that up again. Yeah, you know, some Republicans take that out against me.
Why?
Actually, I don't know. Actually, really, I was asked by the prosecutor what happened, and I just told the truth. I happen to have liked John Rowland, but this is what happened. So I
I did
told
too,
the truth.
actually. I thought he was a fun guy.
I told the truth. This is what happened, and I said no to him.
Why'd you say no if you liked him?
No, because I do the right, honest thing.
In other words, he didn't want to be upfront about what firm he was hiring.
Exactly right. I do the right, honest thing. I like to sleep at night.
So now,
Okay,
what if you did get elected? How will you avoid the fate of people like Rowland who end up going? You know, his father started as the reformer in Waterbury, you know, and he started like clean face. How did he end up repeating what he did and going back to jail? And how would you avoid those lures in office if you're elected?
Well, you know, that's a mystery. That is a mystery
To me
why
too.
he did what he did. Remember, at the time, the governorship paid very little, and he's not a wealthy man. And I don't want to look into what he did.
More
Right,
money
did-
than I'll ever earn.
The bottom line is that I don't need this job financially. I'm very well off. I have a great family, 5 kids, greatest wife in the world. My dogs and cats in the Simon Foundation. So I don't sort of need the gig, but I feel that I have to give back to this state, and this state is falling apart right now. So I want to give back. I want to make it great again. I know that sounds a little hokey.
I've heard that phrase.
I know, me
Yeah.
too. But this is.
But
I'm
it doesn't
sorry.
work with Connecticut's a consonant. America starts with a vowel, so it can't be mukaga.
Yeah, exactly right. But I remember when this was the greatest state in the world. Torrington was making golf shafts. Waterbury was needle bearings and ball bearings. The second district had factories, clothing manufacturers. So this is a different state than I remember 25, 26 years ago. And I think I want to make it better again.
All right. We'll leave it at that one. Mark Greenberg, thank you so much for traveling to New Haven and letting us know about your campaign to be state comptroller of the state Republican convention is next weekend. And you'll be going up against Kurt Miller for the nomination. I guess it's called the endorsement there, right? And then
The
you'll-
endorsement, yes.
And then you will most likely have a primary for the nomination.
Definitely we will. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I pledge to come back 2 months after I'm elected.
All right. Can't wait for that conversation. And folks, hold tight here on Dateline New Haven. We'll be back after a 5-minute break to talk to some of the leaders of community management teams in New Haven about what they're doing to make New Haven's neighborhoods great again. We're going to take it out, the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. Now, you know what it's like to be free. We just got to remember to book our flight. Book your flight with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.